on Arirang News. President Yoon embarks on his state visit to the Netherlands, becoming the first South Korean leader to make such a trip. His focus is boosting the chip alliance between the two countries. South Korea is establishing a pan-governmental control tower to manage supply chains to prevent crises following the recent suspension of urea exports from China. To boost cooperation among countries around the world to address infectious diseases, a global health security coordination office has opened its doors in South Korea. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with President Yoon's departure for Amsterdam. He'll be paying a 4-day state visit to the Netherlands this week to help bolster semiconductor cooperation between the two countries. On this occasion, our Oh Soo-young sat down with the Dutch ambassador for a preview of what to expect.
Shared values will be at the core of South Korea and the Netherlands' evolving bilateral ties as they cooperate to build resilience against common global challenges. That's according to Peter van der Vliet, the Dutch ambassador to South Korea, ahead of President Yoon's state visit to the Netherlands this week. The two countries upgraded their ties to a strategic partnership last year, amid geopolitical and economic tensions in the Indo-Pacific region, where 60% of the world's maritime trade passes through.
We are both top 20 open and high-tech economies that share important values, maintaining a rules-based international order, freedom of navigation, democracy, and the peaceful resolution of conflicts. And these are not just nice-to-have values, they are, in fact, indispensable for our security and our well-being. So during President Yoon's state visit to the Netherlands, we will extend and broaden our relationship further, also into the political and into the security domain. For instance, by strengthening our bilateral defense cooperation and by working more closely together on issues of economic security and resilience.
As microchips are considered the lifeblood of core technologies that enable both economic and military prowess, Yoon told AFP in an interview published Sunday that Seoul plans to significantly boost semiconductor cooperation with major countries like the Netherlands, the United States and Japan. Not only would Yoon's visit enable stronger cooperation between world-leading chip equipment maker ASML and chip producers Samsung and SK Hynix, but van der Vliet says it would also foster links for broader innovation.
ASML is part of a larger Dutch semiconductor ecosystem with interests in Korea. And other Dutch equipment companies like ASM, which makes deposition equipment, and BESI, which makes packaging equipment, are also present in Korea. And the Netherlands is also providing chips for Korean electronics and automakers. So the Dutch semiconductor ecosystem also allows for many startups and small and medium-sized enterprises and knowledge institutes working on innovation and development of the semiconductor industry.
The two sides have also been holding exchanges in other areas crucial to economic security like batteries, hydrogen, smart agriculture and defence technology, according to the ambassador. Amid concerns of technology being misused and undermining societies, he further underscored the two democracies' shared interest in not only leading innovation, but also establishing multilateral dialogue and norms to address ethical, legal and security concerns, especially in the military domain.
For example, how can we ensure that artificial intelligence distinguishes between civilians and combatants? How does an AI program come to its conclusions? And for example, when targeting, and who is accountable for military decisions. And that is also why we hosted the first big international conference on this issue called RE-AIM 2023, together with Korea. And that is why we are also very glad that the next summit, RE-AIM 2024, will be here in Korea.
Going forward, the ambassador placed strategic importance on greater cultural exchanges in areas like film and visual arts.
South Koreans and the Dutch share a close affinity, rooted in the essence of their small yet dynamic nations, and both countries heavily rely on human resources and a shared commitment to finding very innovative and creative solutions to all kinds of challenges. And Koreans and the Dutch are both, I think they're very creative people, and creative people find each other.
Following Yoon's bilateral talks with Prime Minister Mark Rutte on Wednesday, the two will sign deals on key areas of cooperation, likely to include semiconductors, green energy and people-to-people exchanges. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
And this past weekend, the national security advisors of South Korea, the US, and Japan met in Seoul at a time when the stakes are high on the Korean peninsula. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Bae-eun-ji, has an analysis of what it means for regional security and supply chains.
4 months after the historic Trilateral summit at Camp David between South Korea, the US, and Japan, national security advisors from the three countries have agreed to new initiatives to better respond to North Korea's illicit cyber activities, which are used to fund the regime's nuclear and missile development.
We've also launched new trilateral initiatives to counter the threats posed by the DPRK, from its cybercrime and cryptocurrency money laundering to its reckless space and ballistic missile tests.
They also agreed to bolster defense cooperation through a real-time information sharing arrangement on North Korea missile launches. The three countries plan to start this by the end of this month.
I think the most important thing that came out of it is continued commitment to do real-time intelligence sharing, which has a very practical and significant impact in times of emergency.
The three officials also discussed North Korea's growing military cooperation with Russia and reaffirmed their efforts for the North denuclearization.
We reaffirmed North Korea's obligations to denuclearize and the prohibition of military cooperation under the UN Security Council resolutions on the North Korean issue. We also agreed to strengthen coordination among the three countries to ensure the thorough implementation of these obligations by the international community.
Meanwhile, amid growing concerns about supply chain risks from China, they also discussed ways to strengthen economic cooperation. The three officials outlined their joint commitment to work together to finalize a new supply chain early warning system. An expert says the increased cooperation between South Korea, US, and Japan in opposition to North Korea, China, and Russia is expected to last for some time, considering that China is providing full support to North Korea, even though Pyongyang continues to violate UN Security Council resolutions.
This kind of a trend would be continued for a while, unless United States and China have come up with some kind of a very comprehensive agreement between these two countries.
Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea's Minister of Unification, Kim Young-ho, met with the chairman of Rogers Holdings, Jim Rogers, on Monday afternoon. The minister said he's aware of foreign investors' concerns about the potential implications of Pyongyang's termination of the 2018 Inter-Korean military agreement, adding that the South Korean government is fully prepared against the North's possible threats. Chairman Rogers said he doesn't know when, but that Korea will be united someday. The investor added when the border opens up, he'll host a big party and invite BLACKPINK and a North Korean band to celebrate. Videos of hundreds of Palestinians detained in Gaza by Israeli forces are prompting human rights concerns. The Israeli army says it's conducting routine search procedures for explosive belts, while Hamas says Israel is arresting civilians. Our Lee Si-hoo reports.
Concerns over human rights are mounting while the Israeli military is searching and detaining hundreds of Palestinian men in and near Gaza. Images and videos circulating on social media show Palestinian men kneeling on their knees, stripped down to their underwear by the Israeli military. The Israeli military says many of the men are militants who have surrendered and that the search and detain procedures are necessary.
When we spot a group like this that has come outside and surrendered to us after we have called to them, we address them because we are worried about explosive bouts. It is something we have been doing for years during battle, because we have had incidents when people have detonated themselves upon our forces. So this is part of the process.
The army explains that after the investigation, they allow the people they've searched to put their clothes back on. It also says the pictures weren't distributed by the Israeli forces. However, according to the Wall Street Journal, a Hamas spokesman says that the images were of civilians arrested by Israeli forces, not militants who are surrendering. Meanwhile, the United Nations humanitarian coordinator for the Palestinian territories, Lynn Hastings, said Israel should grant the UN access to the prisoners so it can verify their condition. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
South Korea is establishing a pan-governmental control tower, managing supply chains to prevent crises following the recent suspension of urea exports from China. Our Lee Soo-jin explains.
South Korea is enhancing its supply chain management in response to rising concerns about its reliance on imports of certain raw materials. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho held a meeting on Monday with related ministers where they discussed how to mitigate current and future supply chain risks.
Risks in the supply of items directly related to core industries and people's lives, such as urea, ammonium phosphate, and graphite, have recently been growing.
The government plans to establish a pan-governmental supply chain management committee by June next year that will oversee the creation and revisions to supply chain policies. During the second half of next year, the committee will also decide which raw materials and other economic items should be designated as essential economic goods. And the businesses that supply and produce these goods will receive government support for production and stock management. The government also plans to establish a supply chain stabilization fund with the Export-Import Bank of Korea sometime next year to provide financial support such as loans and investment for these businesses, with the size of the fund to be decided in the first half of next year. But a repeat of the urea shortage crisis in 2021 is unlikely. Prices of urea solution at gas stations on Thursday last week were around 1,602 won, or $1 20 per liter. That's within the regular national average price range of around $1 to $1.40. And around 96% of gas stations nationwide were confirmed to have supplies of urea solution. The government also said that it has secured more than 4 months of urea, up from its previous 3-month supply thanks to recent contracts signed with countries other than China. It will also extend the tariff rate quota, which allows for a lower tariff rate on certain imports within a specified quantity on urea and ammonium phosphate. This quota was set to expire at the end of this year, but will be extended until the end of 2024. In a move to further ease the burden on companies looking for other suppliers, the government will provide partial financial support for shipping fees until April next year. Also starting January next year, the government will review long-term plans to establish domestic production facilities. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea has seen its exports grow in the early part of December, despite a drop in the outbound shipments of semiconductors. According to the Korea Customs Service on Monday, the total value of exports for the first 10 days of December stood at $15.8 billion. It's an on-year increase of more than 3%. An increase in exports of ships and automobiles largely contributed to this. In terms of monthly exports, the figure increased year-on-year for the second consecutive month in November, raising expectations that all of December may also see positive year-on-year growth. The number of marriages that reached a 5th anniversary in South Korea has been dropping annually, with the trend continuing last year. According to data for 2022 by Statistics Korea on Monday, marriages that reached that anniversary fell over 6% to a little over 1 million. Since 2015, when 1.5 million marriages reached 5 years, numbers have been falling by around 50 to 80,000 each year. Among couples in their first marriage, 46% did not have children, an all-time high since 2015. The average number of children also fell to the lowest figure so far. During the 3 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, recognition of the need for global cooperation grew. And in light of this, the Global Health Security Coordination Office has been opened in South Korea to help better address health concerns. On this occasion, our Choi Soo-young talked with the nation's Disease Prevention Agency chief on what role the country is able to play during global health emergencies.
Over the course of the COVID pandemic, there was a growth in recognition of the need for cooperation between countries regarding global health security. To deal with these needs, the Global Health Security Coordination Office was opened on Monday in Cheongju City, Chungcheongbuk-do Province in South Korea. Commissioner Ji Young-mi of the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency said that following COVID-19, trust in Korea's health crisis response system has increased, leading to various requests for cooperation from around the world.
The post-COVID-19 era demands that we move beyond discussions and take practical actions to fortify our preparedness and response scheme. As a leading country in global health security, the Republic of Korea is delighted to announce the inauguration of GHS Coordination Office.
Due to the absence of such an office in the past, it was hard to share effective management outcomes from international conferences or policies for health security.
There was no coordination of all those outcomes of the evaluations. So with this establishment of coordination office in Korea, I think it will be really very beneficial for countries to really strengthen the capacity for health emergencies.
A total of 71 countries and 10 international organizations are participating and will hold a ministerial-level annual conference on health and medical issues. Commissioner Ji noted that Korea was part of the leading group of 16 countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom and Netherlands.
I think we are ready to play a leading role to take the shared responsibility for health emergencies. Korea is a leading country in Asia, but we can also play a role for the world.
The new office will serve as an executive secretariat, supporting exchanges of health information between countries and international organizations, providing experts in different fields and offering educational programs, among others. In the future, it will establish specific action plans in the areas of prevention, defense and response, which will include immunization, antimicrobial resistance, biosafety, and legal preparedness. Additionally, the office will coordinate and evaluate each country's operations and proceedings as part of a global health security agenda. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News, Cheongju.
Now over in the UAE, this year's Global Climate Summit is poised to end tomorrow, that is Tuesday. But countries still have to reach a consensus on phasing out fossil fuels, having met with opposition from some of the world's biggest carbon emitters. Shin Se-byuk has more.
At this year's annual UN Climate Summit, COP28, the crux of negotiations is the phased withdrawal of fossil fuel use. The conference is set to end on December 12th, but countries are clashing over the draft of adaptation goals. Some 80 countries have been able to reach consensus on the phasing out of all carbon-emitting fossil fuels. And the UAE, playing host this year, is rolling up its sleeves with high-ranking officials from attending countries to draw up an agreement.
It is our opportunity to deliver an outcome that is based on the science, led by the science, and equipped by the science.
This, however, is facing strong opposition led by some of the world's biggest carbon emitters, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and China. These countries claim that the conference should only focus on reducing climate pollution, not the fossil fuels causing it. OPEC also openly opposed the formalization of a phased withdrawal and reduction of fossil fuels and emphasized the need for a realistic approach to solving the climate crisis.
There is no single solution or path to achieve a sustainable energy future. We need realistic approaches to tackle emission.
This has prompted wide criticism of OPEC and oil companies, among those advocating for the cutting of carbon emissions by reducing carbon fuels.
OPEC and the oil companies right now are trying to whitewash the crisis that has been created by fossil fuels.
The International Energy Agency, in its report released on Sunday, said new pledges to be made at the climate summit are indeed positive, but will not be enough. The IEA said the world is still off track to meet climate targets to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, despite pledges made by dozens of countries. Climate activists symbolically releasing fluorescent substances into the Grand Canal in Venice, Italy, called for action on climate change. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan will host next year's event, COP29, on the back of support from Eastern European nations from November 11th to 22nd. 신세벽, Arirang News.
In other news, smart greenhouses are taking another step forward. With high technology sensors and LED lights, smart greenhouses are expanding because they help grow various plants year-round. And the latest development is in placing these smart greenhouses on rooftops of buildings in the city center to help with energy efficiency. Our Yoon reports.
On the rooftop of this 8-story office building in the city center of Seoul is a 150 square meter glass greenhouse. There are roughly 100 hydroponic vegetable spots where bell peppers and eggplants are grown. The smart greenhouse precisely controls temperature, humidity, and air composition, as well as emitting light that helps plants. Another big advantage of these smart greenhouses on buildings is that they also trap heat and contribute to saving energy in the wintertime, while blackout curtains for the plants in the summer also block the heat from sunlight.
Growing the plants in the city, in fact, improves photosynthesis, allowing the plants to grow better.
The technology for this rooftop smart greenhouse was jointly developed by researchers from various institutes, including the Korea Institute of Machinery and Materials, universities, and technological companies. And they are running the project's first demonstration to get its efficacy verified. Next year, the researchers are planning to install solar cells in the buildings that are being test run in smart greenhouses to decrease energy dependence. And in the next demonstration, the goal is to apply a technology that can circulate carbon dioxide produced from the building to the rooftop smart greenhouses and oxygen produced from the greenhouses into the building.
Energy used for heating and cooling can be reduced by 20%, and carbon dioxide, the main contributor to climate change, is expected to be reduced by 30%.
This latest technology is expected to prove efficient in buildings that produce a lot of heat, like data centers, or buildings that produce a lot of CO2, like gyms. 이은진, Arirang News.
Moving on, 4 more members of BTS begin their mandatory military service this week. RM and V join the army today. Jimin and Jungkook will follow them the next day. The 4 members are expected to be discharged from the service in June 2025. Currently, the 3 other members of the group, Jin, J-Hope, and Suga, are serving in the military. In South Korea, all able-bodied men are required to serve in the military for at least 18 months. K-pop boy group ATEEZ have topped the Billboard 200 chart for the first time with their newly released second album. According to Billboard on Sunday, the album The World Episode Final Will sold over 150,000 equivalent album units, mostly through traditional album sales. The success sets a marker for smaller K-pop agencies in Korea, with the band's representative KQ Entertainment becoming the first such company outside the so-called Big Four firms to have a #1 album on the Billboard 200.
The Billboard 200 chart ranks the most popular albums of the week in the United States based on multimetric consumption measured in equivalent album units.
Spring-like conditions last week have turned into rain or snow in most parts of the country. Gangwon-do province and the south coast will continue to have rain until the afternoon and Jeju Island until the evening. Rainfall in other areas will gradually move away by tomorrow morning. Heavy rain warnings have been issued for Gangwon-do and mountainous areas of Jeju. As for the amount of rainfall, Gangwon-do will receive up to 150 millimeters. There will be 120 millimeters on the east coast of Gyeongsang-buk-do province and up to 40 to 60 millimeters in Seoul and other inland areas by tomorrow. In the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, where 15 centimeters of snow has already fallen, a heavy snow warning has been strengthened. This area will receive a lot of snow, getting up to 50 centimeters by tomorrow. Morning temperatures in Seoul will start off at 5 degrees Celsius, Gwangju and Busan 11 degrees. Daytime highs in Seoul will get up to 10 degrees, Daegu, Gwangju and Busan 12 degrees Celsius. On Thursday and Friday, there will be more rain across the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that brings an end to this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Hope everyone has a good start of the week.